Hi, this is Sebastian Braxton, and welcome back to another episode of Visual Thinking. We're going to be looking at the Fogg behavioral model. And this is an interesting one when you're essentially trying to figure out how to change a behavior in your life and exactly how does behavior change works. It was created by Professor B.J. Fogg, who ultimately was a professor at Stanford University and was a big part of teaching individuals about how to make technology persuasive. And so this particular model is essentially there to really guide us through exactly how this thing is going to work in making behavioral change. So we start off here with these different axes. And let's imagine that here we're going to call this motivation. And over here we're going to call this ability. And so here this is going to be high motivation. And this is going to be low motivation. And here this is going to be high ability or something that's very difficult, and where we have low ability, right? It's very easy to do. And what he calls this particular line here is the action line. Now, the action line is essentially where you get the particular behaviors. And this comes from his equation that behavior equals MAP, right? So this is motivation, ability, and prompt. So imagine the fact that it used to be trigger, but obviously, you don't want to be triggering anybody. That could be problematic for a lot of different people. So what he did was he essentially said you need all three of these things in order to get a particular behavior. And notice a couple things that we immediately learn from this visual model. The first one is that the line never touches any of these particular sides of the graph, right? They never intersect. And what this is trying to communicate is that no matter how high your motivation is, if something is extremely difficult to do, you're not going to be able to do it. So it's like saying, hey, you know what? I want to win more championships than Michael Jordan, even though I'm 40 years old and I've never been in the NBA. I may be highly motivated, right? I may train every single day, but the reality is it's just too difficult to do, and you're not going to get that particular behavior. At the same token, you'll notice here at the bottom that it also doesn't cross. And that's because when motivation is so low, no matter how easy a task is, you're not going to get it. So you may say, hey, all you got to do is walk 5 minutes a day. But there's some people that are not even willing to walk 5 minutes a day or give up the bacon, right? And they're like, I'm not giving up the bacon, et cetera, et cetera. So the first thing that this teaches us is, number one, we want to make sure that we are not depending on these abstract goals, right? So this behavioral model tells us go away from the abstract and head more towards concrete behaviors. I want to think about specific things that you want to do. So for example, you may say something like, instead of me saying I want to, get in shape, you want to think about, a more concrete example is I want to walk 15 minutes a day. Now, the second thing that this teaches us is that it's not just willpower that we really need to do in order to get a behavior. A lot of us I just need to try hard enough. I just need to choose. And that's just not the case. And so the second goal is really all about the fact that we need to focus on action instead of avoidance, right? So a lot of us are thinking about, I want to stop doing this action, but we need to be thinking about positive action instead of avoiding a particular action. Oh, I don't want to do that anymore, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, and we're gonna get away from avoidance. So a third insight that this really gives us is to stop blaming motivation, right? Blaming motivation is something that, a lot of us, we typically do. When we say, well, the problem is I'm just not motivated enough, that's why I'm not getting the behavior. But the reality is, instead of worrying about being more motivated, try to make a task easier. That's the key. Focus on making something easier rather than more motivating. And so this is where a lot of people are like, oh, you just need games or different things like that, which is actually not the case. The fourth thing is to not underestimate the power of triggers or prompts, as he calls them. So when we look at this action line, let's say I'm trying to trigger an action here, right? So here's my prompt coming. And so it says, okay, you need to drink water, right? Now, if you're telling me to drink 2 gallons of water, so this is very difficult, and I'm already very not motivated to drink water because I don't like the taste of water. A lot of people say that. So you're prompting an action in an area under here, under the action line, where you're not going to get the behavior. But if you prompt them here, right, at the bottom of the line, now all of a sudden, as I prompt you and say, hey, I just want you to drink this small glass of water. That's it. Just one of these small glasses a day. A person says, oh, I can do that. And what happens is, as their ability grows, as we go up this sort of, line, this action line, what you're going to find is that I am getting prompted with more challenging things, but because my motivation is increasing because my ability, because I've done it. And so rather than focusing on big leaps, right, you also want to focus on tiny wins and small changes over time. But don't underestimate the power of prompts. When you think about therapists and doctors and, they really have to stay on a tight schedule, they usually set clocks and timers to kind of signal to the patient and the client, hey, we only have 5 more minutes, we need to wrap up, which is why they get the behavior. So they may be motivated to stop the session on time, they may have the ability to stop the session on time, but the trigger or the prompt, I need to stop saying the word trigger because I don't want to trigger anybody. The prompt is what's going to get you the behavior. So do not underestimate the power of these particular things. Now, there's a lot more I can say about this model, but if you really, really enjoyed this and you really have some behaviors to change, I just want you to comment below with some behaviors that you're trying to change or add into your life. Let me know what you think about this model. Have you heard of it before, and different ideas that you have? I'm going to be doing another part to this model to talk about specific types of behavior change and things like that he kind of maps out in a grid. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time on Visual Thinking.